Okay, welcome back to this channel. If you're a beginner or a junior ABAP developer, let us gather here. Come, let us do this. So in this video, I'm going to be teaching you or showing you what is ABAP Unit. Okay, so in most of the tutorial videos that we have there, so you see less and less people showing you how to test your ABAP code. And in real scenario, if you know how to write ABAP Unit Test for your program, then this is better for the production code. So now, what is ABAP Unit? So ABAP Unit is actually SAP's built-in unit testing framework, and you use it to test your ABAP classes automatically. And the unit test usually checks, for example, if you give it this method input X, what is the expected output Y? So it tests it. So let's look at an example. So for example, let's say you have a returning variable called result, and this result calls on a method from a class called calculator. All right, so this the method is an addition method, takes in two importing parameters. Let's say 2, 3. All right, so now 2 plus 3, that's what we are expecting. So the expected result is what? Is 5. So your expected result should be 5, because when you do 2 plus 3, you want to see 5, right? But there's what we call your actual result. So the test will check. You call on the ABAP class CL underscore ABAP unit assert. The class method assert equals. So the act, which is the actual result from the calculation, will be the result. So this is what this method, because this is a black box. You don't know what has been written inside, but you are expecting, or the actual result, actually not your expectation now, the actual result from what this will process should be the result. Then your own expectation, which you call the expected, is equal to 5. So this is how the test will work. Of course, there are different type of assert methods that you can call on, so we'll look at that shortly. It is also important that you should know about the ABAP unit lifecycle methods. So we have the class setup, we have the setup, we have the teardown method, and we have the class teardown. So I'll show you how this works in the code. So we can decide to create the class from beginning, just create a package, and then inside the package you can create the class. So let me right click on this. So I can say new ABAP package and say Z ABAP Unit Test. All right. So you can just see ABAP Unit Test package. All right. So click on next. It selects the transport layer that I'm using. You can also create a transport request here. Click on right here, create transport requests. So say ABAP Unit Testing methods. This is a transport request, so that any changes we make will be saved in this transport request, and click on finish. All right, so our package is created. So right here is our package, ABAP Unit Test. So we can right click here to create our class. So we want to create a class that we are interested in testing. So it's going to be more like a calculator class that has two or three methods, does addition, does division, and also checks if a number is even. Okay, so we want to write this class. There are methods in this class, and these methods is what we'll be testing. All right, so let's give the class definition. Let's say ZCL underscore calculator tests. Yeah, sample test for ABAP unit. All right, so let's go on next. You will be asked to select your transport request, which is this. Then we finish. So right here we get our boilerplate for the class, have public, final, create public, and public section. So in the public section, we are going to have 2 or 3 methods. So we call on methods. So the first method will be the addition method, so method add, and this method takes in importing parameter, let's say I underscore number 1, which is a type of, let's just use integer for now. You can create data elements which you can use, and then we also have I underscore number 2, which is type of int. And then so after we do an addition, we return a result, right? So that will be, this is done using the returning value. So use the keyword returning value and then pass in a variable that you want to return it inside. So say R for returning underscore result. All right, and then it's of type int also. Then at the end of the method you put a period. So this is where there should not be space here. Okay, so it's red here because we need an implementation for this. We'll also do it later. Need an implementation for the method. All right, so write the second method, method divide. So with keyword methods, you use divide, define it, and define the importing parameters. So we have importing. So we say I underscore. I think it's safe to use the same variables here. And also returning value. We also return the result of the division in this class, in this variable. And for division, because you cannot divide by 0, we should raise an exception. So we are expecting an exception. So let's raise the exception here. So say raising cx 0 divide. So we need to remove this period here. Yeah, so raise this exception. So when you divide by 0, you get this exception is raised. All right, so let's add the third method, which will be to check if the number is even. So underscore is even, and then we only have one importing parameter. So we only check if the number is even. Type int, and then we return a value that is of Boolean type. All right, so we have a returning value. And that return value is stored in the variable, let's say R underscore even, and is of type ABAP bool. So we are still creating the class that we want to test. All right, so if you already know how to create the class and you want to go forward on how to test the methods, you can skip way ahead of this video. All right, so we are now writing anything in the protected section and in the private section. So let's save this. You can do Shift F1 for formatting. So the next thing we need to do is to implement our method. So when you do Shift 1, when you actually click on Control 1, like exclamation Control 1, you get this quick fix. So it's a add 3 unimplemented methods, make add private, make add protected, delete add. So what we want to do is to add 3 unimplemented methods. So now we have the implementation of our method for add, for divide, and for checking if a number is even. So for add, we are expecting the returning value rv underscore result. So we can copy this and go right here and paste. And here we implement the methods. And what we want to do is add 2 numbers. So the importing variables I number 1 plus the second one I number 2. Okay, so these are method for add. Same thing for divide. All right, so we use division of integers. I number 1 divided by I number 2. So when we call on this method, we are performing a division. And then to check if a number is even, our returning variable is r underscore r even is equal to x. So we use the modulo operator here. So you pass in the number, I number, divides the I number modulo operator by 2. And so if we have a 0 as a remainder, or there's no remainder at all, that means that number is an even number. You know what an even number is. All right, so that's the class we are working on. So let's save this, Control F2. You can just go straight and activate. All right, so the next thing we need to do now is to write the ABAP Unit Test class that will test our methods if our method is doing what is expected. So you go right here and you see test classes here. You click on test classes. All right, so to create our test class, we can use the keyword class and local test class underscore, give a name, let's say calculator underscore tests. Then we keep the keyword definition All right, and because this is a class that is specific for testing, you need to add the following. You need to add the for testing, that this class is for testing and should not be used in production. And then you need to also specify duration. So there are different types of duration, you can look them up. So here is a short duration, something that's less than a minute or so. Then also you need to indicate the risk level. So there's harmless, there's critical, so you need to also check which or what is the risk level for this methods or for this class you want to test. All right, and so right here in this private class we define some private methods and attributes. All right, so we're going to define what we call a class data. Class data makes you or gives you access to the attribute without needing to create an instance. So let's say test user, test underscore user, which is of type sy username. All right, and then we create another attribute. So in this case, create the attribute called calculator, and the type is ref to our class zcl underscore calculator underscore test, because we don't yet have an end class. So let's say end class. And then there are certain methods that we can also specify. Like I explained before, you have class methods. So anything that has class in before it, class method or class data, these are methods you can access directly using the class and then equal and greater sign to access that method without creating an object. So class methods, we have class setup, class underscore setup, and then another class method we have class underscore teardown. And then for the methods where we need to create instance, so we say methods, we have a setup method. I will explain this using the PowerPoint, just a second. And then we have the teardown method. All right, so let's go to the PowerPoint. Yeah, we see the 4 special lifecycle methods for the class setup. This is only used once. So before all the test method, you can set up instance that will be used across the other methods, other test methods, and setup you can use before each test method. So I will show you how to do it shortly. And also we have the teardown method. So after each test method, you use the keyword, you use the method teardown to clean up after one test is completed. And then the class teardown, once after all test methods are completed, you can use the class teardown to do this cleaning, do final cleanup. All right, so this is the reason why I'm defining these methods here, and we will see how this is used, how this is implemented. So now we go to our methods, which are the major methods I want to test. So first thing first, so we want to test addition. All right, so we want to test that our addition method is working, and then after writing it, you say, okay, this method is for testing, and then I can just make it a chain, put comma right here. And the next method, we want to test division. You have to add for testing. Let's add another one. We want to test even number, then we say for testing. And we want to also test if a number is odd, so say test underscore odd number and say for testing. And we can also test division by 0. All right, so this is how you define your test methods. So I'll give you best practices. So the best practice is that for every test method, you should use a very clean name. So for example, like we did test addition, test division by 0, it should be descriptive. All right, and then test empty input, for example, and then test if customer is not found. So the name should explain what the testing is doing. So this is the best practice of how you should write your test methods. So having done that, we need to implement the methods. We only have a definition for our test class, so we need to look at the message class LTCL calculator test definition does not have a class blah 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 implementation statement. All right, so to do that, you can just click on this and then you do Ctrl+1, so you have many quick fix. So right here we'll select create implementation for this class. double click on it, and then it creates a boilerplate for all the methods that we need to implement. So first we have the class setup, class teardown, method setup, method teardown, test addition, test division by 0, test even number, test odd number, right? So I'll fill up the implementation of this class and show you what it means. Alright, so the first method we see here is what? The class setup. Like I told you, this runs once before all test method. Okay, so you just run this once before all test method, and because this is actually reused in all the methods, or will be reused in all the methods. So for example, our test user here can be used in all the methods, so we need to set it up in the class setup. Okay, so we say our test user, we need to get a value for it, so it's going to be the system username. So that's our test user, sy underscore system username from SAP. All right, and then so for the method setup, I'll bring it up because the method setup, what it does is that it runs before each test method. So before we implement our first method, which is, let's say, test addition, we create a setup method. We set up some of the things that we'll be using in the test addition method. All right, and for instance, create an object instance. This is what we can do. So now we need to create the instance of the class that we'll be using. Remember, our class is ZCL calculator tests, so we need to create an object instance, and so we do that in the method setup. So we can say right here we have calculator, so say calculator equal to new ZCL calculator tests. Okay, so that's that for the setup. And so what is the class teardown or method class teardown? So this runs once after all test methods. So I will take this down. So this runs after all the test methods have been carried out. So for instance, you want to clear the user, because this was the thing we defined globally. So we can just say clear test user. Of course, we take it to the lowest. All right, so we've done the class setup, done the setup. Now the next thing we need to do is what? The method implementation for the addition itself. So we already have it here, so we'll just bring it up. Test addition. So method test addition. So what are we going to have inside? So we can define a variable here, inline declaration, let's say data results. So we use this object calculator and apply the method. So we want to do addition, add, takes in two values, two importing variables. So in this case, we can say these are objects, we call on the method from this class, and number 1, number 2 is being added. So when we write this method, we now use the CL ABAP class. All right, so now what we need to do is that this is the calculator will perform addition 10 plus 5, 15. So when we call on this ABAP class ABAP Unit Assert, which is the class we use for the ABAP Unit Test, it has different types of methods. So if you click on F3 right here, it takes you to the class itself. You can go through the importing variables. So we have expected, we have act, we have message, we have level. All right, and also we can, let's see if we can see, yeah, so if you look right down here on the left hand side, you can see all the methods that you can use. So you can say abort, assert bound, assert differs. So you say assert two data objects that they are different, assert equals, and several of them. You can see all the types of assert methods that you can use. So the actual or the act is actually what it's being returned from your method. So here we put result, because this is what we will get after this. So we don't know if this method is actually working, so we need to know what it returned. And then the expected is, okay, we know that 10 plus 5 should be what? Should be 15. So your expectation is that here should be 15. And then you can as well give a message. So we have, can you message and say 10 plus 5 should be 15. So let's look at the message. What does it say? So parameter message is a description. So it's a message in case of an error. So when an error occurs and the test fails, so this message will be displayed. All right. So say 10 plus 5 should be 15, not anything else. Okay. And you can save this, Ctrl S, we can do Ctrl F2 and you activate. So this is activated. And how do you test? So if you want to test, of course there are still other methods here we need to test, but let's do the test first. So let's, when you go to, you just right click anywhere and you can say run as. So you can, right here you see ABAP Unit Test. So when you click on this, so below here you see that it is green. So green means that your test passed. So your method for addition is doing as it should be. Okay, so right here you see this. So let's also do, let's open the, so what we can do is that we can divide, we can split the screen into two and put the test class on the right hand side. Go to window, editor, toggle split editor vertical, so that our test class can be here, our global class can be on the left. All right. Okay. So let's test the class using test coverage. So test coverage will show you which area you have covered, which area of test you have written, or which programs your test has covered, and which parts you still need to write test for. So if you go to run as, you can click on ABAP Unit Tests. When you right click on this, select coverage, and then you execute. So you see that, of course, we still have a green. So you see that only, so if you look at the class we are testing, you see green for the add method, which means that you have successfully created a test for the add method and the test is covered. But now if you scroll down, we have two more tests that has not been covered for method divide, and for the method is even. So you'll note, if you notice that in our test, those methods are empty. So that means we need to write tests for them. So that's how the test coverage works. All right. So let's go further now to write our tests for the test division. Oh, also, if you click on the ABAP coverage below, click on this ABAP coverage, you see more description. So you see here, this is the class we are testing, and these are the methods that are in the class. And so 33% of the statement has been covered. And right here for this method, 100% of everything in that method was covered, and here nothing has been covered. So, and we have two statements that we missed in those two methods. Okay, so this is how you can check which area have I covered, which method has my test covered, and which one do I need to write next. So let's write the test for the division. So of course, what you need to do is you need to access the method. So these are method divide. So we want to write it here. So we create inline variables. So let's see result again. Oh, I missed something. Yeah, so I missed just some naming convention. So actually, if you want to define this variable here, you use quotes, like this is the class under test. This is the popular naming convention. Of course it works, but then let us just follow the naming convention. So here we have quote, here we have class under test. Yeah, so let's just follow the naming convention. So method teardown, we can clear the method. So in this case, we don't have anything to clear in our teardown. For example, the method teardown, when you have created maybe some test data that you want to clear, so you can do method clear down to clear those methods. So this ensures that the next test will start with clean data. All right, so right here we don't have anything for our method teardown, so we can go straight to continue with the method for the test division. So we define a variable inline declaration here. So we say the cut, which is test, class under test, colon the method, divide. So divide takes in two numbers, and we can as well put in the two numbers that we want to divide. So we can say right here, we can say number 1 is equal to 50, and then number 2 is equal to, let's say, 2. Alright, so this is our test division. This is the method divide. Alright, so let's just continue. Okay, so let's call on our class the CL ABAP Unit Assert class. So CL underscore ABAP underscore unit underscore assert. And so we want to use the method still assert equals. So let's look right here, assert equals, double click and pass in the values. So we want to assert equal. What are we getting? Which is the act. So the act is what we get from this result. This is the actual result, actual value we get back. Then we have the expected. So without looking at the method, what do we get? So 50 divided by 2, that's 25. So we're expecting 25. And if this fails, we get a message, and that message should say 50 divided by 2 should be 25. So if our assertion fails, then we get this message. Put a full stop here. Yeah, so you can just format it a little bit, save, activate, Ctrl F3. So watch carefully. So if we do test coverage again, or let's do a unit test first, right click, and you can also use shortcuts, Ctrl Shift F10. So you see that there is green. So the test addition and test division both are green, but then let's use test coverage now. So now you can see which of the methods we have tested. So the ones that are green means that this has been tested and they were successful, no error. But this one right here means that we have not yet written any test code for it, and that's why it's red. So it's understandable because it's even, test even number. Of course, this test division by 0 is also a method that we can write. So here it's even has not been implemented. All right. So I'll show you something. So if you click on the ABAP coverage, you see the two methods in our class. So you see that add and divide statement coverage 100%, 100%. Is empty because nothing has been covered there. There's no ABAP statement in it. So you can see how many statements were covered, how many statements were missed. So missed in the sense that if you check the add, there was no missed statement in divide, but for is even, see that we have missing 2 statements has not been checked. All right, so this is how you use your ABAP coverage to check which of the classes have been tested, which of the methods have been tested, and what needs to be checked. So I'll leave the tests odd number and test even number for your practice. You can do this as a practice. Also, one thing you can also do is that when you right click here and you go to source code, you can say clean up with ABAP Cleaner or clean up with interactive ABAP Cleaner. So it opens up a window. So here your ABAP Cleaner can help you make adjustments to your code. Of course, so far my code did not require any adjustments except this line. So when you are satisfied, most times you see changes, so you can just apply and close, and that is all. So that's what I want to show you about unit test. So this covered basically most of the things that you'll be doing when you're writing ABAP unit tests. So yeah, so what you need to do now is to check out the common assertion types. There are assert equals, we have used it, assert not equals, you have to check how it works, assert true, assert false, assert initial, assert not initial. So there are so many of them that you should look up and check how it works, and this is how you can use them to test your methods and your classes. Thank you so much for watching, and if you are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and to encourage me. See you in the next video. Bye bye.